When I look back on my life, there are a few faces that shine brighter than the rest, faces that shaped who I became, guided me when I was lost, and held my hand when I didn't even know how to ask for help. One of those faces belongs to my Uncle Mark. He wasn't my father, but in every way that mattered, he carried that quiet strength fathers often do. I was only 10 when my parents separated. The house grew silent, my mother worked double shifts, and I often ate dinner alone. I remember the night Uncle Mark knocked on our door carrying 2 boxes, one filled with food, and the other with board games. "You can't fix everything, but you can always show up," he said with a smile that made even the walls seem less empty. He was my mom's older brother, a calm soul with a gentle laugh that could break tension faster than any joke. He wasn't rich, didn't drive fancy cars, but everyone loved him for his kindness. That night, after dinner, he taught me how to play chess. I didn't win, but I learned patience, the kind that would carry me through tougher days. Weeks turned into months, and Uncle Mark became a regular part of our lives. He'd stop by after work with small things, a bag of oranges, a comic book, a small notepad he said writers used. "Write your days down," he'd tell me. "Even the hard ones. Words make pain lighter." I didn't understand back then how powerful those words were. When middle school came, I grew quiet. I felt different. Too tall, too shy, too unsure of who I was. My mom was tired all the time, and I didn't want to add to her worries. Uncle Mark noticed before anyone else did. He picked me up from school one day, no warning, just told me we were going for a drive. We ended up by the lake just outside town, sitting on the hood of his old blue truck. "You don't have to be loud to be strong," he said, skipping a stone across the water. "Sometimes, being kind in silence is its own kind of power." He had a way of saying things that didn't sound like advice at first but stayed in your heart for years. That day, I told him about the kids who teased me. He didn't tell me to fight back. He told me to remember who I was when no one was looking. People see what they want, but you know your truth. That became my quiet mantra. High school brought more storms. My mom fell sick for a while, and money grew tight. Uncle Mark started visiting every other day, fixing the sink, mowing the lawn, cooking when my mom couldn't. I'd wake up early for school and find pancakes already made. He always left a sticky note by my plate. "Keep going, kid. You've got this." I don't think he knew how much those notes meant. I kept every single one in a small box, hidden under my bed. They became tiny reminders that I wasn't alone. When I graduated high school, Uncle Mark was in the front row, clapping louder than anyone. After the ceremony, he handed me a small envelope. Inside was a worn-out key. "It's to my cabin by the woods," he said. "It's not much, but it's quiet there. You can write, think, or just breathe whenever the world gets too loud." College was tough. The distance from home made me realize how deeply Uncle Mark's quiet presence had anchored me. I called him every Sunday. Sometimes we'd talk for an hour, sometimes just a few minutes. But every call ended the same way, him saying, "Proud of you, kiddo." Then one winter, I got a call that made my heart stop. Uncle Mark had collapsed while shoveling snow outside his house. He was in the hospital, unconscious. I dropped everything and drove through the night to reach him. The smell of antiseptic filled the air when I walked in. Machines beeped rhythmically beside his bed, and his face, usually so full of life, looked pale, almost unreal. My mom was there, holding his hand. She whispered, "He's been asking about you," before he fainted. My throat tightened. I sat beside him, took his cold hand in mine, and whispered, "You can't leave yet, Uncle Mark. You promised me pancakes." He didn't wake up that night. I stayed there until dawn, writing in my old notepad, the one he'd given me years ago. I wrote everything. The fear, the love, the gratitude. For the first time, my words weren't about pain, they were about hope. A few days later, he opened his eyes. The nurses cheered softly. When I walked in, he smiled weakly and said, "You still writing, kid?" I nodded, tears spilling down my cheeks. He reached out, squeezed my hand, and whispered, "Good. Don't ever stop." Uncle Mark recovered slowly. He couldn't work as much anymore, but he didn't lose his warmth. Instead, he started volunteering at a community center, mentoring kids who had no one to believe in them. He said, "Every kid just needs someone to show up. That's all." Years passed. I became a writer, just like he once hinted I could be. My first book was dedicated to him. At the launch event, he sat in the front row again, his smile brighter than the lights on stage. Afterward, he hugged me and whispered, "You did it, kiddo. You made the world a little softer." When he passed away a few years later, quietly in his sleep, it felt like the world had dimmed. But even then, he left one last surprise. My mom handed me a letter he'd written weeks before. It read, "If you're reading this, I'm probably gone. But don't be sad too long. Go out and live, really live. Tell stories that make people believe again. In kindness, in love, in second chances. You've got my old cabin now. Fill it with laughter, with words, with everything good. And remember, show up. Always show up. I went to that cabin the following weekend. It looked exactly as I remembered. Small porch, chipped paint, wildflowers growing by the fence. I sat on the wooden steps with my notepad and began writing. For hours, I poured out every memory of him. The laughter, the lessons, the quiet moments. When the sun began to set, a gentle wind passed through the trees, brushing my face like a soft touch. And for a moment, I could almost hear his voice, calm, steady, and full of love, saying, "Keep going, kid. You've got this." Now, every story I write carries a piece of Uncle Mark in it. Every time I help someone, listen without judgment, or simply show up, I feel like I'm carrying on his legacy. Because the truth is, the most beautiful stories aren't the ones we write, they're the ones we live through the kindness of others. And Uncle Mark's story will always be my favorite.